this will be. We don't want it more than an hour, God forbid. And if we're lucky, we'll have wandered through here and picked up as many of these little flags at what I think are appropriate places to stop, to talk, and then bring them with us, and we'll find a place for them, and end up, you know, hopefully with a little better understanding and appreciation of some of these people that are buried here. And having done this common cemetery in various ways, and this is my second time, every time I do it, I get a little more guilty, because it seems we're looking for the misery and the death and the disaster and the bad you know, choices and heartbreaking things. It makes a good story, but it gets you down, at least me, a little bit. And I almost want to, you know, kneel down and say, I'm sorry, we're all over your sacred spot. Too bad it happened, and that'll be clear when we get right over here and get started. And I have my little cheat sheet cards. I think. And, okay. So here they are in no particular order, so I got to sort these out and pick the right one as we find them. It's like a treasure hunt. But that will be the beginning of a little discourse on who they are and why we're stopping. And if you have something to contribute, you know, any family stories about your kin or whatever, or just a good story, step in and let's hear it. And we're going to start with a question that I want to ask you of this up here, if I can find it. We're looking for a young. I hope they didn't remove the flag. There's one up here. Okay, that's.
This is the new part of the cemetery.
Yeah, I'm going to stay away from the new part. Yeah. Albert Young. Okay, here we go. We got two stones here, not connected in any way. This one says Albert E. Young, and he's a sergeant in a bomb group in World War II. And I just wish I had a better way of doing this, but I'm just going to have to. I'm reading my notes. Young, Albert E., top turret gunner, B-17, killed over Münster, Germany, September 30th, 1944. So he was a casualty of World War II, obviously, and I think there are only 4 of those killed in action, people from this township during the whole war, which is a pretty good record when you think of it, but of course it didn't help Albert Young, and in fact he lost. And he, within about a month of his death, young Albert was born, Jr., and he only lived a couple months and was gone before the end of 1944 as well. So we have father and son both dying within a couple months of each other. Again, a sad situation. Now, I thought we can learn more about that if you go over to the Historical Society. We have a nice, like a paste-up book, photographs, medals, cigarette lighters, all sorts of stuff from the various participants in the war. And there's a page and a name, and some people were very, very good about collecting everything about Uncle Joe, and it's right there. It has a record, military record, and all, and you've got the whole story. So I thought we could do that with Albert, but there's nothing. In other words, the young family that were closest to him, for whatever reason, have not contributed anything so that the general public knows a little more about the details of his service in the war. And who knows why. And as happens, the youngs who might have known more about that, there are fewer and fewer of them around now. I wrote down Viola Reel, who was a young, if you will, also, and she's gone now. So it may look like that forever, but maybe somebody will come into the museum with the big room there and turn the pages till they get to Young and add a few things about their history. Mason Edward wasn't old enough to fight. 1941 and 1945. Do some of you know the sad fate of him?
Yeah.
You do.
This is Mason Dutton,
Yes,
right?
this is Mason.
Dutton.
He's a Dutton. Okay.
His pictures in the library.
Pictures in the library. What?
His
Can you
father,
see?
it's a farm accident. His father backed over him with a tractor.
Okay, so what the crux of this is that I said that last year, that his father accidentally drove over him and killed his own son. And in my notes, I just have a great big no, and I took somebody's word for the real perpetrator of this, and I don't know who's right or why I got that information. So as soon as I find, it's just so awkward.
Dave, do
All right.
you want a note holder to hand you the notes at the right time?
I'll keep trying.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thanks. Mason Edward died October 17, 1945, and I had written in parentheses, so it's clear that that's my words. Crushed his head, run over by tractor, driven by his father, and here, at that point, someone in the audience disagreed and said, no, it wasn't his father. Anybody there? You weren't there.
No, I wasn't born yet.
Okay, now let me ask the name Gilbert. I've seen Gilbert, I've been looking for Gilbert for the last week or two. Does anyone know a Gilbert family or somebody or some worker named Gilbert?
Is the last name Gilbert?
Well, I don't know, because other people, including the guest that was here, just simply said Gilbert, and I was stupid enough not to get clearer information so that we could track it down and see, was he accidentally the farmhand who was there and accidentally did the dirty deed rather than the father. Either way, it's sad for the boy, but at least you haven't done your own child in. And how did Gilbert manage to go on? I guess we're never going to know, because unless somebody comes and fills out the real deal, we have a sort of a mystery.
There were no news reports at the time?
Pardon?
No news reports at the time?
Well, like anything else, if you track it down, you might. I have not. There's no newspaper clipping I can think of. But our historical society is so chock-a-block with paper products and letters and everything under the sun, to burrow into that, mess and find the nugget is going to be a chore. But that's sort of what we're trying to do, and we may have some other examples as we go through here about mysteries that are solved and mysteries that are still under investigation.
Those things tend to be self-reported at that time, so it's...
Yeah. So that's how we start. Let's go on up here and continue.
I can hold that for you if you want.
Like right here. Right? Okay, here again is another soldier, and you can see the you can see the medal for some of these, meaning they fought in the Civil War. And Charles Weber,
Civil War.
wow. This is supposed to be Silas Weber, but it isn't. So we're going to ignore that. Keep your eyes open for another Weber in our travels. I may not have marked it. He's a Civil War veteran, and he fought in a battle that the Vermonters didn't do very well. And, so, sorry there, Charles E., whoever you are. So let's move up here. I'm looking for the flags.
There's one down here.
Yeah, I saw that.
Dr. Corey. What do these little S's mean?
That's the fun.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Interesting.
This is Dr. Simon Corey, Melissa Hunt. So he's a doctor. It is amazing when he serviced the state, Craftsbury, he was one of 5 doctors practicing in Craftsbury at the same time, which blows my mind that was the case. You had different types of doctors. Corey, I think, was a homeopathic doctor with their own peculiar way of treating illness and whatnot. But we had a Dr. Bemis. And these are all but one section in here somewhere that I'm saying. We've got one there. We got Oscar Bemis, Dustin, Dr. Bailey, Dr. Corey, and Dr. Bibby. And I'll stop at the Bibby site here when we find it. Where is is this one? Is that a doctor? That is a doctor?
Should we pick up this flag?
Yeah, I think we could. Back and forth, back and forth. Liberty McIntyre. Okay, Patterson. There are of course 2T Pattersons and 1T Pattersons, all in the same little part of Craftsbury. Does anybody know the difference in terms of origins between the 1T's and 2T's? Somebody, and I think you would see it on the stuff that I left inside, but basically one group are Highland Scots and the other group are the Lowland Scots, and I can't remember which is which. But you know Barb Patterson perhaps. There are Pattersons still all over the place in town. And again, it's nice to see it for real, but there's a story about a Patterson. One Patterson wanted to go to the States, and Thomas was a silk weaver, and he was all set to go to America. A younger brother, Robert, wanted to go too, and his mother insisted, no, I don't want you to go there. You're going to have a horrible fate, and don't accompany your older brother. But he did, and he ended up in a mill and burned to death. He went back into the mill to get something and never came out, if you will. So that was Mother's worst nightmare.
Well, in the Scots language, those two names are pronounced quite differently.
Can you do it?
Paterson.
Oh, okay.
Is this.
Yeah. Paterson.
And the one with 2 T's is Potterson.
Patterson. Got that?
Got it.
All right.
Actually makes a lot of sense.
So they had no trouble keeping it straight.
No, I guess not. Okay. So there's an example of a Patterson. And again, if you can see the stuff that we have out there, we have some other little items
Hey Dave,
of Patterson. Yes.
Isabel Morse, is that connected to anybody local here? Because I know there are Morses in Hardwick.
Oh, there are lots of Morses here.
Here.
Yeah. Right here, we've got the farm here, right in the village, was owned by a Morse forever and ever. Aurelius.
Here in East Craftsbury?
Yeah. I almost took the photo out of Mr. Morse and his wife. Brought it with me, but it's one of many, and I didn't want to get flustered any more than I am. So that would be.
I have another question about this. So her maiden name is on there. Is that typical with these graves at this time? That in other words, her maiden name is on her gravestone as opposed to her married name?
You see it a lot.
That's common.
Especially Scottish people, they're so proud of their Indian
Yeah, I've noticed
heritage.
it a couple
Yeah,
times
you
as
see
we
it a lot.
walked around. Yeah,
Very progressive.
Well,
right up there.
she was a,
Except she is his wife.
That's right.
He is not her husband.
That's right. Well, he died first.
she was a liberated woman, but she's underneath. Yeah.
In Scottish law, a woman kept her name.
Yes. So would this be, what's the relationship then with Jane and Barb and John and James?
Great-grandfather.
Great-grandfather?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some more Patterson connections.
And I
right
guess
there.
mine too.
You
Barb
too.
lives in that
Yeah.
same house. Still.
I have
Yeah.
one stop to pay homage to the first Mrs. Kraft.
Martha would have been
Yeah,
theirs.
we'll see if we get there. Okay, I think we'll pull this. Wonder who mows this?
Well, and Alex,
Country. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, Isabel was 41 then.
Yeah, doctor.
Alexander Shields' stone is a footstone up there. And his wife, you'll see, is Margaret Morse. Margaret.
I'm trying to get rid of some. All right. Go ahead.
What's the relationship then between Alexander and, is there
Well,
a connection?
This is a son.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Can you explain the orientation of the headstones? Like, some are facing one way and the other, and is the person behind it or in front of it? And
My wife should
Sometimes
be
all
here.
around. Sometimes it's in the middle.
and then
Sometimes
the little square with the initial is
Yeah,
the
that
plot
marks
of the
the plot.
That
frame.
marks
That
the
marks the
plot.
plot, yeah.
So S is
The
for
S.
shield,
Mm-hmm.
and it should
So-
be on all four corners.
And it is. There's one
Yeah.
right beside Alexander.
Not all of them have those. But,
Yeah.
This
some
is
face
a
east, some face
cemetery.
west.
A cemetery
Rising
that
sun or setting sun.
harks back to
Optimistic.
yeah, 1867. So this was opened, incorporated, whatever you want, in 1867, right after the Civil War. There is another cemetery that was, basically had the same starting point, 1867. It happens to be next door to where I live, on the Branch Road. And if you want to see a different kind of cemetery, look at the Branch Road, and then recall what you're seeing here. It's a very, very different idea of beauty, I'll say, and I'll not talk plastic any more than I
Yeah,
have.
the glow lights drive me crazy.
But my wife,
Try driving by that at 2 o'clock in the morning.
usually it's got a bunch of drunks on it going up and down the road.
So is that cemetery on the Branch Road, Wild Branch Road, is that considered one of the Craftsbury
It
cemeteries?
is.
Okay.
They both came into being. Civil War is just over. The Craftsbury Common Cemetery is the oldest one, and 1794 or something is one of the oldest ones. And that was really the only place to go of the biggies until these two different, somewhat smaller cemeteries. This one in East Hill, and the Branch is a lot closer to, the West Hill. And my wife is constantly helping people who are bringing a loved one to plant, and the guy who digs it has to do it just right. Your question about where's the head relative to this and that, there's a million ways you can screw that up for other people who maybe even owns a lot but hasn't shown up yet. And my wife has to think, oh boy, if they're gonna, they'll all fit if they're, ashes and whatnot. But you have to move this stone because it's in a lot of the next. It's a chore. It's a real job.
Are there other cemeteries besides these 4?
We've got Craftsbury Common Cemetery. We've got the 2 little ones. We have the, what shall we say?
One on Cemetery Road.
The Cemetery Road. That one doesn't have a real name, does it?
It's the one on Cemetery Road.
The one on
That's your
Cemetery
name.
Road. Okay. And that one, I don't really know exactly when they got started either, but they're obviously. And then you might start saying, well, what about Andersonville? That's small, almost like a family spot, but that's another one. But that does it all. The
And
Branch one-
McLaren.
Pardon?
McLaren.
McLaren.
Where's
That-
that?
That's just where Gebby Road comes in
Yeah.
out of Greensboro.
So it's still on Gebby Road. That's why you
No,
don't see
it's
it.
on whatever that's called between the Four Corner and Gebby Road.
Oh,
I mean, on Mud Island or up that way?
No,
is that?
no.
Rocking Road?
Yeah, Rock and Rock Road.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I have a question.
That's quite a ways
Someone
away.
told me years back that the Craftsbury Cemetery would not permit Roman Catholics to be buried there, so that's why the one on the cemetery road was
Wow.
started. I don't know how true that is. Do you know?
No. I'll be darned.
Susie, you had a good, where's Susie?
Well, I was wondering, Dave, so the cemeteries, the four that we have, were not originally established and affiliated with a particular church, since we had four original churches. They were more village cemeteries.
No, I think every association for their own, favorite place. They're not.
They are not associated with a church
They're not.
when they were
No.
founded?
No.
They were associated with the area, the village more.
They probably gravitate to the same one.
So this
If you're
wasn't
a
the
Methodist,
Presbyterian cemetery?
No.
No. And the common one wasn't the Church on the Common cemetery?
No, it's found in the select board records.
We have the chapter and verse of a disagreement right here in 1867 because, of course, this was owned by somebody before it started sprouting stones. And the guy's name was Moody. And there were a lot of Moodys. And well, I'll just leave it at that. The town, the village legal people, whatever, wanted this piece of land. That
I could
the
be.
next one over is
It's part of our history, so we should
McCoy.
know this.
This was the spot that the town wanted, and they wanted the owner of the land, the current owner of the land, Moody, to give it up, and he refused to. He was offered $750 or something like that, and he absolutely refused to give up some of his farmland, and it went to court, and we've got the little, whatever they did legally, and told him, sorry, what do you call it when you take something by
Eminent domain.
eminent domain? So he got eminent. Yeah.
ED.
domain.
Not to be confused with another
He
thing.
He got so mad that he swore, and this is the part I'd love to see the print again, because I know it's in print. It was in a letter or something there. But he said something to the effect of, God damn you, you do that to me, and I swear I'll never walk on that land again, ever. He's buried right over there.
So he may not have walked on the land.
I often wonder, was he failing slowly and realizing, oh no, do I have to go there where I swore never to set foot? But
Well, he didn't, so it's
he
okay.
didn't. That's right.
Well,
He
according to the record, there was a Moody who accompanied the first Simpson to emigrate into this area.
Wow. I would surely believe that, because that's a very, all right, as far as the Moody's, they are kind of interesting. All right, here we go. Patterson. Well, yes. Robert Moody, okay, Robert Moody regarding sequestration in his land in 1867. There was a Thomas Moody, Civil War veteran, and his record is clearly defined in a book that we have that has all the skinny on every single veteran in our town that fought. And we had a Renwick Moody also. And one of the items that we have that's kind of fun and frustrating at the same time is his reminiscence 50 years ago, and this was written by him about 1950, so we're talking about 100 years ago in the village of Craftsbury. And what you would see is you walk down, from north to south, and then if you go up the Crick Road or whatever for ownership and buildings and businesses at that point. And he did a nice job, but boy, hard to be sure you're in the right place when you go through a map, if you will, like that.
I have another question. The Scottish connection, does that cover also the Scotch-Irish?
Rarely.
Okay.
There was a Wiley family, which was Scots-Irish.
So they made a
Yeah.
clear distinction between those who were Scots-Irish and those who were from Scotland?
No, they didn't make a distinction. It was who moved here.
Okay.
And is that Wiley Hill? Is that
The,
what Wiley Hill is named for?
I'm
George
not sure it's
Sprague
the same Wiley family. It's a pretty common name.
wrote the book on participation of Craftsbury soldiers in the Civil War. Okay, and one of them is mentioned is a McRoy. Okay, now McRoy, what do you think? It's Scottish, or do you think it's English, or how about Irish?
MC or MAC?
Oh, let's not be that.
In the old records, that's a useless distinction.
The
There's a grave around here somewhere.
we had one of the McRoys, actually two McRoys, fought. They both came back. One of them had a few bad habits, and George Sprague's diary is fun looking for things like that. In it, on a certain date, I think it might have been 4th of July or something, he notes in his book, no trouble for the festivities except for one Charles McRoy for public intoxication. He was quickly taken care of, and things proceeded. So, and there's another situation where a McRoy gets drunk and tries to get into a boarding house in Craftsbury, and he fails, and the people inside fight back, and they really fought back because they ended up shooting this guy, and he in the leg, and 3 or 4 of the doctors at the time all came to Mrs. Bump's abode and tried to save this guy, this Irishman again, and they failed, and he died. So if you look at a book we have in there, the front page, it says murder in Craftsbury. It's 1872 this occurred, but there's another rowdy Irishman, so I bet you the Scots would take umbrage and think that the Irishmen are out of control.
Some of the Covenanter group were teetotalers. It wasn't universal, but many of them were.
Hey Dave, I have
Yes.
a question over here. This headstone here that's got this almost paper over it. It's like, it says on the other side, Children of A&L Morse. Do you know anything about that, or was it? Is this a place marker for future
No, that
inhabitants, or was it a?
there. Of course, a lot of children's headstones have lambs on them, or other pieces of.
I was just wondering if it's more than one.
And I don't know anything, but here's another Morse, obviously. Did these stones get cleaned recently? Does anyone in this group know of?
David Rowell did.
Pardon?
David Rowell,
Did he clean it?
yeah, when he's
I-
doing them on the common.
I thought I heard that was the case, and I'm so impressed with the ease of
I
reading.
just spoke to John about it because I cleaned every stone by hand, and it was a huge job, but
Yeah.
David did it with a pressure washer.
It really helps. Years ago, we hired people for the common cemetery, and it was just a breath of fresh air, and you can actually see and read some of these that are
Well, this is Aurelius Morse.
That's, oh yeah, they're hard.
This
They're
should
hard
be
to get.
Louise.
Their names on the back.
That's right, it is. From this angle, you can see that. You can see it from this angle.
Oh, yeah, because of the shadows.
You can see that.
Come up with a better way. And I'm failing. The Babcocks, well, I'm just going to say that is a very old name. I think he was one of 4 who were in Craftsbury ahead of everyone else, and they slept on the common, you know, back in 1788 or so. You can see Babcocks are pretty prevalent, not just here but elsewhere. Everett Babcock, of course, and his wife were the owners of the Wee Hoos, now our home for the Craftsbury Historical Society. And Everett, one of the Babcocks is mentioned as by George Sprague that he was the heaviest person in town that he ever weighed. He was 312 pounds, and once this other guy weighed him himself on 306 in a store. So that.
And they weren't tall.
They weren't
The Babcocks weren't tall.
That's, yeah, you're right. So
Fire plugs.
Babcock, oh well. He was a minister, but some of his personal habits weren't appropriate for being a minister. I'll just leave it at that. I do feel guilty if you hear something that's, you know, a little bit off color or whatever. You don't know, should I keep
Well, Babcock
facts?
was one of the 4 people that appeared on Craftsbury Common in 1788.
And there are a few left. Bailey, let's go look at Bailey here. I have a reason for it. We've already seen Bailey's. Remember I mentioned Bailey was a doctor. He had a couple kids, and one person was a girl, you know, Mary. It's, yeah, Mary Bailey. None of you are that old that you'd remember her from school days. She was a teacher and a principal in Craftsbury schools for a long time. And she also was an amateur historian. And one of the things I left out here are the way that she, you know, collected historical stuff. And she has in these little 3-ring binders, and they're all tabbed, you know, if you want to find what she had to say about your family. There's a place you can pick up on a tab and see if she was right or wrong, or what have you. And she did a good job, and she was not a professional. Lived back long enough where it was done, you know, basically with hand and pen or pencil rather than even typewriters. She died in 1981. I just missed her, but she was the daughter, of course, of Dr. Bailey. And I'm going to give you an example of the sort of things you find in her books. And I took this, even though this man is buried on the common, she wrote this up, and this is her quote. Luckily, it's in quotation marks, so I can believe that it's his text. Well, actually, it was Mary's text. William Lonergan was such a bungler at his work that his employer, East Craftsbury blacksmith John McCroy, called him Billy Bungles. When he became too old to work, the neighbors put up a little house, and that little house is somewhere, you know where the flower shop, I'm trying to think, what would you call it? Is there, well, somewhere between here and the paved road, they put this little house up. And it's basically a shack, and it was for him, you know, to subsist, even though he was such a bumbler. But Mary goes on to say, Billy died alone in his little house and was not found for several days, and rats had been eating on his face. So that's the kind of thing Mary collected for gruesome reasons.
I mean, that wouldn't be the little house across the road.
No, it's gone. Yeah.
Okay, because that was a McCroy house too.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Is that the one that the Ios is living in now?
Yep.
Yeah. No, it's a building that was put up and then it had to move, and we're talking about, I think, lanterns, or it's that corner has gone back and forth with things on it. Once long ago, it was Lonergan's home.
So are these Baileys related to the Baileys that presently live here?
Wait, now who we got?
Well, we got Albert Bailey. His mom was Ethel Bailey.
Ethel Bailey. All right. Yeah, there we're following that. If you like to get frustrated, become a genealogist. Somebody gave me 34 three-ring binders filled to the brim with a person's genealogical digging, and it's just, it makes you think, God, no. She had grandkids, you know, put stuff on the front there with the illustrations and whatnot. And when I took it, and I didn't want it, but I took it because I knew it was going in the trash, I did look through it, but there was no way I was going to keep buckets of this stuff. And she did pass away some years ago, so I wanted to make sure the family knew, you know, what might have gone wrong, because it was, I think, some kind of a yard sale, and the family just took them, gave them whoever wanted them, and somebody in Craftsbury wanted it for no good reason, and then I got stuck with it. But it is a chore with the genealogical, and it's a business, and it can be fascinating. And what I'm saying is, I don't know whether or not they're related or not, right?
And it presents many opportunities for mistakes.
For mistakes? Yeah.
There's another Bailey family on the west side of Craftsbury who are not directly related to these families.
Yeah, that's probably true. All right. Well, let's see. Now, we're headed towards the big boy here. We could spend a whole 3 or 4 hours here. This, of course, is sacred to the Simpsons, this corner. And it's got all the names that you're probably familiar with. You know, I'm not going to go through the genealogy of Miss Jean and Mary Jean Simpson. There are a few things showing photographs of them in the library now. You can look at them if you want to. And our historical society is still getting items and paperwork from either the estate of Mary Jean Simpson or Miss Jean Simpson. That includes items from some of the auctions, and they might be offered to us. It's pretty daunting, and we've got somebody on the letters now sorting them out, trying to make some sense of them all. And I know for a fact that you dig there and you get corroboration of things that you were hoping for or not hoping for so many times, and that's where we're now. And we may solve a few problems, questions. Neither Mary Jean nor Miss Jean, of course, married. And a couple of us were just talking about the situation where Mary Jean Simpson, she had a beau, an Anderson, James Anderson. He was a brilliant civil engineer. He helped direct the construction of Yankee Stadium and the planetarium in New York. In his long lifetime as an engineer, he went to Venezuela. He went all over the United States. He went to Russia during early days of Lend-Lease. But he also was a country boy, and Mary Jean and he were both graduates of in the same year of Craftsbury. And Mary Jean, of course, was starting her own career in business and mostly government. She was the first bill clerk for the United States, and I've seen Senate and I've seen House of Representatives, but she worked there as the bill clerk of note. But she couldn't or didn't get married. And the problem with them, lovers that they were, Mary Jean had a mother, of course, and the mother was a hypochondriac. And she used that card of being ill and needing extra help. Every time she gets wind that Mary Jean is getting awfully, serious about James, and that if we see it, I'd love to find it again, but I've seen it in print, that there was a point in time where they had to retract cards to the ceremony of not marriage, but at least the first step in there.
Engagement.
And because Mary Jean had to go take care of her mother. Wherever she was, she had her mother to take care of. And the mother didn't want her married, and she did a good job of it, because until she died, there was certainly no marriage in that relationship. And it went on beyond that. For whatever reason, in their golden years, they didn't bother to get married. But one of the nice things we have, it's just a Kodachrome color photograph, just not a especially good one, of the two of them, wrinkles and all, together down somewhere in Florida. And Florida was the sneaky part. They, wherever they could, how they could do it without mother knowing about it, they'd meet down in Florida and have a vacation. And that's sort of how it ended for years. And,
So James never married either?
No.
No, he did not. And you start thinking, what's the big picture? Why aren't there more Simpsons around here? Well, you got only two girls, cousins, neither of whom got married, and then the parents die, and before you know, there's a whole bunch of Simpsons gone, and you got to really look around for any connections. Now there are some marriage situation. They're kind of interesting right in here because all the names that you're familiar with, I said, are basically up in here. But come on over here.
Mary Jean had a brother, John, too, didn't she? There was another John Woodruff Simpson, and I thought that was her brother. Yeah.
Okay.
And they were fairly
All right.
prolific.
Elizabeth, okay, Elizabeth.
Her name was married.
Were any of you party to a special ceremony in the Weehus about 2, maybe 3 years ago, when a family with a matriarch leading the charge wanted to donate a big painting of somebody? Does that ring any kind of bell? It was an off-season thing. It was so bizarre. You get questions and ask for assistance, and some of them you can take care of easily, but others it becomes a very, very big, rigorous job to take care of their needs. What this woman wanted, this is her husband, was to have this big portrait of her father-in-law, named Howard, last name Howard Jr., well, so on and so forth. The genealogy is driving nuts, but she loved him so much that she couldn't bear to think of a painting going anywhere for years, and she lived down in Connecticut, Massachusetts. But finally, she made contact here and said she'd like to have a special ceremony honoring her father-in-law, whom she adored, as I said many times. And so we corresponded, and she started sending pictures. I'm going to pass that around. There she is as a young woman. Here she is in her more, I don't know what days. She's still alive, I think. She was 90 when she came up here, with nieces, a nephew, the husband was there also, and that we had a special tea. Ann Wilson made cookies, and we had things opened up the Historical Society just for them on a rather cold spring day, I think. And they tramped in here with this big painting. And I'd been looking around, what the devil, where are we going to put it? And I decided, well, this whole wall is white and nothing else on it. That looks like a good spot. We'll put it there. And they brought it to me, and with two of us got this thing. It had a special light on it too, as well. I mean, it's pretty fancy. Of George H. Howard II. The reason we went that far with him is because he and his wife were the first real owners of the Weehus when it started to become a home or a summer place rather than a harness shop the way it had been prior to that. And so in a roundabout way, this Mr. Howard is partly responsible for where we are, and we own it, but it belonged to George Howard and his wife for a long time before that. So we got it up, we had our little tea and introduced ourselves a little bit there. And they said, well, we'll be heading home soon. Nice to meet you and all. Less than 2 days later, the nephew comes down. He says, "Grandma wants her painting back." We're trying to, and she's just inconsolable. She said something to the effect that, "I can't stand him being in this room full of stuff, old children wheeled things, and it's just not appropriate, and I want it back." And she blamed it on the grandkids, and said the grandkids were the ones who insisted it be returned, but you know, the nephew there was kind of shamefaced about the whole thing. But she's was the kind of person who got what she wanted, and what she wanted was it back. So if you go in the Historical Society and you go to the large, you know, new room, Bob Twist room, look up on the wall, and I put up just one of these trashy, you know, quick snapshots of the painting, a little askew, and it sits up there partly to remind me and others that sometimes it's a good idea to look at the gift horse in the mouth, I guess you could say.
So what would you have done differently if she approached you tomorrow?
Well, I'm still I'd love it, but she's probably going to die before she gives it to us. I think it's significant, and it's not just because of that. He was a member of the firm that John.
It'll have to be the Butler House before it's here.
And he was a businessman. He worked in the village. If you saw the presentation about Jim Flint, he lived in Jim Flint's house, and when it burned, there's a lot of connections here of the Howards, and so we parted friends. But it was a burden, certainly, on us.
You know what?
And I don't
get the bequest in writing.
Or out the
notarized.
Yeah. And sometimes it goes the other way. Sometimes you get some wonderful things from people who are, you know, happy to get rid of them. And we've got the better place. And so I don't know if I'll ever hear whether she's still alive or not, but she had dinner with President Eisenhower, sat next to President Eisenhower one time. Her house in Connecticut was rewired by the president of Schenectady. The what? General Electric. They walked around in big circles there, and she had every bit of, you know, I don't know, just a presence that you couldn't ignore.
Well, these Simpsons came from Kilmarnock in Scotland, which is right in the center of the rest of this settlement, which at one point reached more than 100 families. But I've never been able to, even though a lot of the Scottish records are available online now, I can't track the Simpsons back, and they seem never to have kept anything.
Yeah, that's a fact. We're working down to the corner and it'll be done. I missed this one on our first walk. I looked for it, but I missed her, but we got her this time.
Passing on a mistake.
Yeah, life. Baby Wilson. Okay, Venus Brill. All right. We have a photograph of the class of, well, it doesn't really matter what class it is, but it's a school picture of the District 3 in Craftsbury, in the East Craftsbury. The old schoolhouse in East Craftsbury, some of you would know where it is. It's not a schoolhouse anymore, but that was schoolhouse number 3, and it burned once, and so it has 2 names, but of course lots of kids went to school over the years. In one picture, the teacher, her name was Venus Brill, I think Army or something, and she was in charge of this bunch of kids. There were, you know, lots of local names and all, but here's her stone. Wife, she was married, died March 8th, 1904, age 22 years, 6 months and 7 days, and I can almost read that. But this poor 22-year-old teacher is listed officially as committing suicide with strychnine for whatever reason. And you look at the photo of her, and she's a wisp of a little girl, and something was wrong, and she chose to end it all. The name White, I doubt her husband had anything to do with it. It was well thought of, so I've seen.
How long was she married?
6 years. So it wasn't, we have another situation where it wasn't that long. But we're here, I'm looking, yeah.